Let's be clear, National Front didn't change with Marine Le Pen. They didn't change, they are still a fascist party. I'm not arguing what are you going to vote on the second round and so on. The main question, are you organizing a fight in the street? Are you organizing the fight in your local neighborhood, in your school, in your workplace against the fascists? That's the basis, because the National Front is not going to disappear in the next months. They will be there with a government that will still build the ground for them to grow. And so the main question will be there more people organizing against them, arguing against them in every place? That's the key. That's why it's important to mobilize in the street against the fascists.
Hi, I'm Kate Herford. I've been a member of UAF for about 10 years now, and I'm going to be chairing the meeting this evening. And I think it's really important that we think about why we're here tonight. I think this is a really critical moment for anti-fascists across Europe at the moment, as Le Pen has advanced to the second round. And she's done this off the back of a wave of Islamophobic and anti-migrant hysteria. And her rise has also coincided with a significant rise in racist attacks as well. And this is alongside the advances of far-right parties across Europe and Donald Trump with his racist, Islamophobic and anti-immigrant platform across America as well. And his subsequent attempts to introduce the Muslim ban and to build a wall to stop Mexicans from entering America, which means that we're in the entire global community now. Politically, the climate has become significantly more racist over the last year. And hate crimes have spiked by 41% here after the EU referendum, with UKIP launching a manifesto promising to ban the burqa, and Theresa May introducing her draconian laws against migrants and using EU citizens' rights as bargaining chips. It's incumbent upon all of us now to work to keep racism out of the coming general election and across the elections across Europe. And that's really, I think, why most of us are here tonight.
Let's imagine that a candidate, it's just to give an example of the situation of the politicians in France, that even politicians like Jean-Luc Mélenchon, with a lot of good reason why people voted for him, for its anti-austerity program. But even him, during the election, supported Marine Le Pen when she went to Beirut. You know, she wanted to have a sort of international, she met Putin, she went to Beirut, she tried to meet with Trump, but it didn't happen. But she went to Beirut and she publicized, she organized a meeting with the Great Mufti, one of the Muslim authorities in Beirut. And she brought the press, and arriving at the meeting, she played as if she discovered that she had to be veiled. And so she refused on a very public thing. She refused to go to the meeting, refusing to put a veil on her head. And Jean-Luc Mélenchon, it's a disgrace, supported her to have done this. The second thing about Jean-Luc Mélenchon, at the end of his campaign, he explained that the solution about the so-called crisis of refugees, all of you know that it's not a crisis of refugees, it's a crisis of the politics of the different European states. But he said that the solution was for the refugees to stay at home. So it's just to give you a picture of the responsibility of all the mainstream politicians in France about the climate, the racist climate, the Islamophobic climate that built the ground for Marine Le Pen and the fascist rise. And finally, the third reason is that now it makes 10 years that in France, all the left, and even the far left, has given up the specific fight against the fascists, saying that the National Front is not a fascist party. And let's be clear, National Front didn't change with Marine Le Pen. They didn't change, they are still a fascist party. And if you want to just have just one of voice to explain this, maybe you know it. There is one politician who was a candidate for the election. I would say, maybe I don't know exactly, but I would say it's a kind of UKIP policy, you know, very racist, reactionary one. It's called Dupont-Aignan. And he got a little more than 4% to the election. He decided to make an alliance with the National Front, supporting Marine Le Pen for the second round. He's a racist and a reactionary politician. In his current, there are some people on the top of his movement who decided to split with him because they disagreed. You know, they are not progressive, they are not anti-racist, and they explained that it was impossible for them to ally with the National Front because they were, you know, the front picture, and they knew very well, because they are their friends, they knew very well what happened behind, and they can't support it. The National Front is still a fascist party. So what to do? Everybody in France now, and even, you know, in the demonstration yesterday, on the May Day demonstration, some international journalists came, and the only question was, are you going to vote for Macron? Every time, my answer was, and even when people around, you know, everywhere, because it's everywhere on the TV and so on, and everybody has this question. Every time I say, are you going to fight the fascists? That is the main question. You know, what you shoot in the ballot box is not the first question. The first question, are you going to fight the fascists? Are you going to fight the fascists this week? And it means campaigning in the streets, in our neighborhoods, in the workplace, to say, don't vote, we don't want one voice, one vote for Marine Le Pen and the fascists.
Thank you.
As I said, my name is David Over from Students Stand for Racism. I guess I will speak about Friday, considering this current, which was very important, considering this current climate of Trump and Le Pen, which we've discussed already. There's a need to fight back against racism, and UKIP are one of, in terms of the UK, they banned, a part of this manifesto was the ban of the burqa and a constant attack on Muslims. I think Friday, on the weekend, you saw the poll go down a little bit. I'm not taking all the credit, but I think it's important that we constantly fight back against them. But one of the most interesting things for me was after it went online, the constant attack I had compared to other activists was incredible. I'm assuming I wasn't submissive for them, but I think it's important for us to stand up against them. Alongside a number of people that was very supportive was a young friend of mine who's a black Muslim girl who's from France, and said how she never felt saw any freedom or equality in France, and she never felt comfortable with it. When she came here, it was different, and I think that's the UK's our tradition of fighting back against racism made her feel a sense of belonging, and she also had the notion that we should fight back against racism. And I think whenever there is a racist group or party or individual, people should go there. So in terms of Cambridge tonight, where people hopefully will get to Kate Hopkins, hopefully. I think now is a crucial moment more than ever, considering the general election, where racism will play a key role. The Tories' constant attack on Muslims and migrants and refugees. Theresa May, when she was the Home Secretary, you saw her sending out vans telling people to go home. She will continue to use this rhetoric to divide people and to gain votes, and we must do everything we can to keep racism out of the election. So I Stand Up to Racism has called a day of action, so I think everyone, whether at your workplaces or university or wherever you may be, go outside, organise and make sure we fight against racism, and make sure that we are there and our voices are heard, and we won't accept this division that is in our society, and that we in the general election, we want people to talk about actual problems, whether it be the NHS or education or housing. Yeah, I think that's it.
It's a pleasure to be part of such an esteemed panel and to be part of Unite Against Fascism, who for so many years have been at the forefront of very, very difficult and sometimes violent struggles. The struggle to be respected, the struggle for decency. And I guess many of you here, many of you members, you should be proud of yourselves too. Because of course the anti-racist struggle has always been a multicultural struggle too. And I'm reminded that a week or so ago the late, great Dar Kassaw passed away. And like you, he was part of that internationalist struggle that black and white people, African, Asians and Caribbeans, if you were not white, you were black, whether you were African, Asian or Caribbean. It was a collective struggle. And when we look here in the UK, that over the many decades, actually, we've had a black British civil rights movement, much like they had in the States, a civil rights movement, but we've never called it that. I've never known why we haven't called it our own civil rights movement. We should. And you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, are at the forefront of that movement. Why? Because you care. And as we've seen over the last few years, in many ways, in Western democracies, we've seen a white supremacist pushback. They've seen the change in demographics in the USA and across Europe, and also in the UK. And it's almost as though it's their last hurrah, collective hurrah. But it's dangerous, it's spiteful. And if we don't react, it'll take seed and grow. We all saw during the Brexit campaign that it was driven by a toxic immigration debate. And those at the forefront of that Brexit debate gave a nod and a wink to that core of racist bigots. Post-Brexit, many of them felt, at last we can be bigoted and racist and it's okay. And it wasn't just towards African, Asians and Caribbeans. It was towards all those that were perceived as immigrants. I remember 3 days after the vote, I was in the studio of LBC with James O'Brien, and we were talking about the Brexit vote. A German woman in her 60s came on the phone in tears. She said that she'd lived in a village, in a quintessential English village, with an English husband who was a doctor for over 25 years. But she hadn't been out of her house for 4 days because of the fear of xenophobia. Her neighbours had put excrement in her letterbox. People that she had known for decades had told her, post-Brexit, now you German, F off home. The first time in decades that white Europeans were also being targeted in this wretched, toxic, xenophobic climate. Same in the USA, the same in France too. I was astonished, I guess as you were too, if you heard one of the last speeches of Marine Le Pen. Of course, Marine Le Pen couldn't call immigrants, non-white people, savages, because the courts, she would be hauled into the courts for inciting racism. She can no longer call us savages, but she found a way to do so. She said in her last book one speech that I will protect you from savage globalization. How wretched is that? And of course, with this dog whistling, all French people knew what savages meant, because it was Jean-Jacques Rousseau who talked about the noble savage. But in the Front National's, what, 1 minute left, speech, if you're not white, you're a savage. You're either a noble savage or a wild savage, but you're a savage. What's our response? We might not have money. We might not have big businesses, but we do have the vote. And you know, whether it's in the USA, when they, the numbers of, what is it now, what are the numbers of the vote in the USA? What I do know, that 50 million people in the USA never voted. 40% of the population. 40% of the population never voted. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million. We wouldn't have Trump if people voted. Here in the UK too, even in the Brexit vote, 28%, some 12 million people never voted. It's up to us here today. Warriors fighting for social and racial justice. We've got to be those warriors to ensure tens of thousands of people are registered to vote. If you do, there's no such thing as a safe seat, by the way. No such thing. So let's not complain, let's get mobilised, let's get organised, let's make sure we've got the numbers. And with our vote, what are we asking for? Finally, what are we voting for? For social and racial justice, for decency, for opportunity to fulfil our ambition. Thank you very much.
I'm quite emotional today because I'm really very worried about the situation in France. Le Pen and the Front National represent the worst political program for the French, as you know. She received 7.6 million votes in the first round of the elections. That means 21.46% of the votes. She was beaten by Macron, who received 24.83% of the votes. Things are not predictable concerning the second round on the 7th of May. Mélenchon, the far left, has not told his supporters to vote for Macron. There's no choice. It's either Macron or Le Pen. So whether you like Macron or you don't like Le Pen, you have to vote for the lesser evil. Macron is now an independent he left the socialist government of Holland 2 years ago. He was a minister, I don't remember of what, but never mind. And he formed the independent movement called En Marche. Let's going forward, En Marche. Representing the center-left, he used to be, as I said, a minister, right? He is strongly behind Europe. Le Pen is obviously totally against the European Union and wants to leave the EU. Today she's accused of fraud, having put on her list of MEPs 18 people who never came to Strasbourg for years. Yeah? Instead, they cash their salaries. Instead, they work for the Front National in France. She's asked to return 1 million euros to the European Parliament. It is incredible, in my opinion, that knowing what's going on in the European Parliament, they haven't checked. They haven't had a check of this years ago. Why what is so corrupt about the European Parliament? It is incredible also, well, she represents, as you know, the suburbs and the small towns and the rural areas, which are often racist and immigration. As you know, as a child, I remember Paris was always against every other place in the country. There was a total division between the Parisians and the rest of France. And obviously the division, nowadays it's slightly different, that major big cities in France are against Le Pen, but the surrounding provinces are obviously Le Penist, yeah? Le Pen attracts the youth. Why? She attracts the youth because a lot of them, whether they are qualified, not qualified, ignorant, whatever you name them, between the age of 18 and 24, they face unemployment, which is growing. There are about 10% of people unemployed in France. And even, as you know, ex-communist workers vote for Le Pen, particularly the North, which is a deindustrialized region where all the mines have been closed, etc. Yeah? She's against globalization, as you know, the establishment, the political elite. She has something against the elite. She's using that because she wants to destroy the whole structure of organization, social or political, in France. Like her father, she wants to expel, obviously, the foreign workers, the Muslims, the Roma people. Lots of Jews feel insecure in France, although she uses them against the Muslims as well. The famous lawyer, Serge Klarsfeld, and his German wife, Beate, if I'm pronouncing correctly, I'm not sure, always anti-Le Pen, said 2 years ago that if she won the presidential elections, they would leave France. They will have no choice. Le Pen claims she's fighting for le petit peuple, in as much as Hitler mentioned the same thing, yeah? And now, of course, le petit peuple, as she calls them, have been totally forgotten by the main parties, the socialists and the Les Républicains, which we used to be named UMP under Sarkozy. She uses the same tactics as one can see, and language as Hitler to attract vote. But she does all kinds of things. She mixes history all together. She goes back to the Third Republic and when you had the Dreyfus affair, and she speaks of being the new Joan of Arc, although she's not here. She's totally mixing the past history with the reality of today. She's, you know, and she thinks she's going to save the little people of France. She uses, and who are the little people of France, by the way? They are so-called white, rural area people who have had for generations who've been so-called French. I'm French, but my background is so mixed that I don't know what she would call me. Yeah? She's prepared to dismantle, as I said, all political, social organization in the country. She will bring chaos, increasing poverty, as she will completely destroy the economy because, as you know, firms are starting to leave France, like Whirlpool, the American firm. They are going to Poland to have, obviously, cheaper labor. What else? What to do else? No. People will open bank accounts somewhere else. They want their savings secure, so they go probably to German banks. Her supporters are hard nationalists who want to establish, as I said, a white France, French people with, yes I know, with a deeply rooted background, yet her advisors called Messiha. Messiha is an Egyptian, by the way, who has been naturalized, yes, naturalized. Refusing to vote for Macron would be terrible, would allow the non-liberal Le Peniste, full of bigotry and xenophobia and nationalist hatred, to win. The Front National will then close the frontier with dogs posted against migrant people. She will introduce protectionism, as you know, and leave the EU. Her friends are Trump and Putin, the rich Russians who have sponsored her campaigns, the ultra-conservative Catholic groups who have voted for Fillon. He got 19% point something. in the first round, will not vote for Macron. They'll vote for Le Pen, or they'll abstain, which is no good. In June, the legislative elections will help her to have more people in the National Assembly. So the future is very bad and uncertain. As you know, they've started to fight in Paris already. Votes from the far left, the left, and some conservatives must go to Macron to avoid this fascist catastrophe. I hear that people are fighting in Paris. Let's hope civil war will not start, as Le Pen has established paramilitary armies all over Europe from the time of 2002, starting with Sweden. That's it.
Assalamu alaikum, peace to you all, brothers and sisters, comrades. Can I just first start off with not necessarily a minute, a 30-second contemplation, because it's the 4th anniversary of the terrorist murder, Islamophobic murder of Muhammad Salim. So if we can just take 30 seconds for that, please. Okay, so I think some of the speakers already have kind of mentioned some of the key points, and I just want to maybe focus it on from a Muslim perspective a little bit. One of the things we've been doing up and down the country for the last 2 years in particular, to nearly 15,000 people, is talk about Islamophobia and explain it to them and the angle that we're coming from. And a lot of people, as maybe some of you here in the audience, would ask the question, well, what is Islamophobia? What's the definition? There are different definitions. The one we use, and in particular, I hope it becomes obvious to you as soon as I read it out, is because this is actually exactly what is taking place. And the definition by Fearing, a report done in America, is an exaggerated, irrational fear, hatred, and hostility towards Islam and Muslims, perpetuated by negative stereotypes, resulting in bias, discrimination, and marginalization of Muslims from civic, social, and public life. The whole point of the hate towards Muslims and Islam is to achieve this gain, which is to marginalize, push out Muslims from civic, social, and political life. Because in essence, in any society, these domains, these spheres are what makes that society. If we can push the Muslim community out of that, then they'll just follow like sheep and do what we want them to do. And that's exactly really, it might be true for the Muslims at this stage, but that was true for what happened to the Jewish community, that is true what happened to the black community, and that is true that's going to happen to all the migrant community and all the minority communities. And this perpetuation and this focus is not achieved just by random. It's actually a well-organized, orchestrated strategy. And that's been going on for years, okay? And the reason I say years, and you might recognize this quote, is if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. Do you know who said that? Malcolm X. He said that a long time ago, okay? And this is true today. The professional Islamophobia that is taking place, what is that? Okay? It is to make lies and smear an organization or an individual. Just, get it, certain journalists, certain papers will make up these stories. Once you've done the smearing and everything else, it puts enough pressure either on that individual or that organization amongst the wider community for them to actually pull out. And we've seen that happen time in and time out. Yeah? We've seen, for example, recently, Birmingham Central Mosque, when it spoke out against Prevent, what happened next? Next thing happened is the person who actually spoke from the committee was marginalized completely because there was a newspaper article saying he made these extremist comments. And following probably 2-3 weeks, the Home Office turned up. I know I've got 2 minutes left, but I'll do my best. So this kind of constant barrage of how Muslims and institutions and organizations are taken out from the public has to be something that we have to challenge. And the only way we can challenge this is by solidarity. The only way we can challenge this is by being there. Because in our community, we're still very weak. We are very, very weak. There are not many people in our community, you would probably agree with me, that are willing to speak up. This is a very brave woman, right? We don't have men that are brave as to do what she did. And that's where we are. The only way we're going to get any braver is if you guys are standing by. So when you see these negative stories and everything else, reach out to these people. The second point I wanted to make, which is really important, is that the Islamophobia that we witness, similar to all the other communities, is also institutionalized. Okay? It's no different from the racism that we're still suffering, and it's no different from the anti-Semitism that we're suffering. Okay? This is an institutional. If you just look at the government's counter-terrorism legislation from 2000, from 2001 onwards, if you look at the ridiculous calls for 90 days, okay, before you actually charge someone, to lock someone up for 3 months before you actually tell them why you've locked them up. Can that have happened in any civilized country? Can you imagine if a country in Asia had done that? Right? We'd be moralizing them how backward they are. But it happened in our country, the discussion. And this is what's happening. If you look at now, I mean, Prevent, I don't need to probably tell you that, and how toxic it is, but Schedule 7 as well, when Muslims are leaving and coming back to the country, the suffering that they have. And it's not just about security. If it was about security, all well and good, but it is about demonizing a particular community. And this demonization isn't going to stop. The demonization in France isn't going to stop. The demonization of any community isn't going to stop. Because you know what? They've divided us. They've divided us either as Muslims, either as blacks, either as Jews, either as men, either as women, gay, whatever. They've divided us. So we've got to come back onto something that unites us. The only thing that unites us is our humanity. That's the only thing that unites us. So we've got to put that at the forefront of everything. Doesn't matter if you're Muslim or not, doesn't matter if you're gay or not, doesn't matter if you're black or white. If you're about humanity, I'm with you. And that has to be the first point. The second point, which Denis articulated fantastically, is about action. We're becoming fast a community and society of lack of action. Okay? It's particularly true in the Muslim community, but it's also getting true in the wider community. Wherever the fascists, racists, Islamophobes rear their ugly head, we have to be there in front of them, to confront them. They make us feel uneasy. How is that possible? How is it possible for us to feel uneasy when they're doing the damage, when they're in the wrong? How does the devil make the angel feel uncomfortable? We've got to turn this around. Okay? We've got to turn this around, and the only way we're going to do it, we have to be visible. You have to be visible. We can't just use words on social media. We have to be visible. And the third thing, and I'll finish on this point, is we're missing a very big opportunity. This movement, and some people mentioned here about names. Marine Le Pen doesn't get called a fascist. UKIP don't get called fascists. Yeah? Trump and the people behind him, they didn't get called fascists. What do they get called? What's their new name? Alt-right? So this is like an alternative right. They're not racist, they're not bad, they're not fascist, they're not all of this stuff. This is just an alternative right. This narrative is what's giving them the cloak of safety. You've got to call it out. Look how uncomfortable they looked when UKIP's press briefing was interfered with, right? I can't find the right word. There was another word I was going to say, but I didn't want to say it. But can you see, when the journalist asked that you're a bigot, why can't we ask these questions to these people? Why can't we say, are you a racist? Why can't we say, are you Islamophobic? Why can't we say these things? We should say these things. Etiquette isn't to hold this back. We've got to call it out as it is. These guys are fascist, racist, Islamophobes, and we've got to call it out. So the opportunity here that I wanted to mention is the new generation. The new generation are growing up with new terms, and they don't see the connection. Very soon we'll have a generation that's grown up in this country doesn't recognise what happened in Europe. Isn't going to recognise what Hitler did. Because we can't connect the terms. It's a new terms. Don't let this argument die down. Thank you very much.
Our job has to be out in every town and city publicising the Keep Racism Out the Election campaign. We don't want to end up with a situation like Marine Le Pen. It will depend concretely on what we do. So I want everyone, on May the 10th, we have a day of action. We want to be out in our local communities, get involved with Stand Up to Racism campaign, join one of your local groups, and we can push back racism on the far right. Thank you.
Every vote for Marine Le Pen is a step forward to build a mass fascist party. Every vote for Marine Le Pen is more confident for the racists in France. Every vote for Marine Le Pen is more confident for the police in France. The police is voting between 50 and 70% for the fascists. And when the fascists and when Marine Le Pen grow, the police is more confident to attack and harass in the popular area, the young blacks, the young Arabs, and in the demonstration, the activists. Every vote for Marine Le Pen is a step forward for, after the election, more violence in neighborhoods, not only from the police, but extra institutional violence against migrants, against Muslims, against the young blacks and the young Arabs in our neighborhood. Is more violence against the activists. And again, the question is how many people begin or continue to fight the fascists this week and after the vote. But because whatever happened with the vote, the fascist threat will not be finished and the war will still be there. And I finish about this. Macron elected will be a very unstable government, a very unstable state for the reason that she said. He has no party, he built a movement just to support him for the election, he has no connection to organize the society and so on. It will be a very unstable government. And of course, the history is not going the same way, that's what happened in the 30s. But it's much more like, and it would be an alarm for us. It's much more comparable with the last governments in the Weimar Republic in Germany. Very unstable government, a lot of elections, governments falling down, the ones after the other, governing by order, not going through parliament. And Macron has already announced that he would govern by order. This kind of government led to Hitler. So the only answer is, are people going to organize themselves everywhere? Confrontations are coming, and I disagree with just having a dark picture of the situation in France. 1 year ago, there were hundreds of thousands of people in the streets fighting against the government, organizing not just some national day of strike, some demonstration, some wildcat demonstration, some occupied place where there were some fighting the National Front, organizing some movement to be in solidarity with migrants. These people have not disappeared. There are still some strikes in France, some local strikes. So the elections, people talk only about elections. There are still some strikes in France. There are still some demonstrations. And I want to finish about this. First, there is a new generation. When I say that the left has given up the direct confrontation with the fascists, the demonstration to say, no, we don't want the fascists in our local area, we don't want them to leaflet, we don't want their posters, we don't want them to organize meetings. In this campaign, there were hundreds of young people who came back to the fight and the direct fight against the fascist meetings. That is what is going to happen, and that's what's happening with the school kids. And I finish, really, I sum up now. There was somebody who spoke in the 30s about fascism is human dust. It's true. There's no coherence between fascists, just the idea that they are together, behind Marine Le Pen or Hitler or these kind of things. but they are human dust, only on one condition, that in front of them, there is unity between people fighting back. And that's what we have to build now. We have to unite ourselves. There is what I would like to tell you. There is no more time. There is no more time. There is no more time now to think that you can delegate to some other the need to fight back. Everybody has to stand up and to fight back. That's a lesson of France. At the moment, the main slogan in the demonstration is coming from the demonstration of last year, where everybody was saying everybody hates the bosses and the police. Now it's everybody hates the National Front. Tout le monde déteste le FN.
Last 3 months, we ran something in the magazine and we produced some leaflets, and I was interviewed on the BBC 4 and I said, I thought what we're living through now, and it's getting worse, is the worst political situation since 1945. Now, there are organisations out there that you all know. There's the EDL, there's UKIP, there's all sorts of bodies running around. Government bans national action. Well, they don't ban Britain first. And let me tell you, a couple of weeks before Jo Cox was murdered, they issued an internal document to their members, Britain First. And they said, we have been gathering intelligence on these people. And they had black mayors, black MPs, black councillors. And they said, and now we're going to pursue these people to their councils, to Parliament, to the places they work, and to their homes. And what happens? This lunatic butchers Jo Cox shouting Britain First a couple of weeks later. And we formally complained to Scotland Yard at the highest level and said, you surely must have people inside these organisations. You must have known about that document. But why weren't they rounded up? Because it's an absolute legally clear effort of incitement. If you ever saw one, and if there's lawyers here, they would see how clear cut that is. And what's happened to Britain First is they pick them up, they ban them from town centres, they breach the ban, they get 6 weeks in prison. And that's the worst that's happened to them. And up and down the country, in recent years, they've been invading mosques, they've been attacking Asian shopkeepers, they've been going into areas in a really confrontational way. And the only people who've stood up to them, or led the standing up to them, has been the UAF, backed by trade unionists and local activists. I've, on the eve of the election being called, I'd written to the Home Secretary and I've written to the Labour spokesperson on the Home Affairs Committee, and I said, we want to come and show you the evidence of what's going on, which has included paramilitary training in this country, dating back to the late summer of 2014, with a Russian instructor, a Polish instructor, firearms seen on the first occasion, and not teaching people, and they put it in writing, how to take down people with a knife. And this video exists of some of this training. Why aren't these people all behind bars? There's been certain movement. We were asking for a ban on American Nazi millionaires coming in to London, holding meetings behind closed doors. We've got not paid informants, we've got our people who have been trained and have been sometimes for generations inside the far right, risking life and limb to go in there and bring out what's going on. And there's copies in the magazine, and you'll see the reports, detailed reports. We exposed the speeches in those meetings. We had Nazis from America, from Austria, from Hungary, from Sweden. And it's what's happened very recently since Trump's election. Alt-right has set up shop in the UK. RT, Putin's broadcasting service, has boosted its airtime, and Breitbart, the press agency, has got lots of people, and they're bringing them in from the United States. They're university educated, they've got skills in taking video, taking photographs, and undermining society. And we've got to recognise what we see, the EDL and others on the street. They're a problem, and they're disruptive, but they are not the enemy that will try to topple our democracy. And we've all got to wake up to that. Thank you.
But we're living in a very serious situation. There's 3 countries I'm going to name, all in Europe. That's some strange European illness. I promise I wouldn't be anti-European at this meeting. I jest. But you've got to say, France, Austria, the Netherlands, in all of those countries, the Nazis are advancing. I'm not interested in stupid arguments in the garden about is populism on the rise, or has the rise peaked or not. All I know is the Nazis' vote keeps going up, and it hasn't actually started going down yet. So no, they haven't peaked. And actually, I think there's a very stark lesson that we have to learn in this country and also in France. And I think the lesson comes from looking at the difference between the two. I just find it astonishing that young people in France can be lured into the hands of a Nazi Front National. And you can compare that to the 1970s in this country, and it wasn't automatic by the way, but actually in the 1970s in this country where we made a deliberate effort to actually win the youth to the side of anti-fascism. Which is something I was involved in School Kids Against the Nazis. I know other people here are involved in the Anti-Nazi League. And we made at the centre of what we did was to build a mass anti-Nazi movement in this country that exposed the Nazis for what they were, but they are Nazis. But they are not UKIPers. UKIPers, as far as I know, do not want to wipe out all democracy, do not want to actually set up concentration camps and put in all the non-white people. Well, I haven't said that yet, anyway, unless I've missed something. They don't have stormtroopers on the streets ready to break people's backs. So they're not fascists. But when we see a fascist, we have to name them as fascists. Otherwise, people get lost in this mishmash of nonsense about populism. So you're comparing different types of parties, you're not actually understanding that actually some of them are out-and-out Nazi parties. So I think we have to expose them, that's the first thing. That's what we did in the 1970s, that's what's been done more recently in this country. We're not going to not allow them to get away with calling themselves alt-right. For example, Richard Spencer is a member of the alt-right. That's Richard Spencer, the one who does the Sikh Hiling in Washington 2 days after Trump got elected, and that was apparently okay in America. So we have to expose them for what they are. And there's been a problem exposing them in France, I think, because of the whole situation of the confusion around republicanism and secularism, which I think has been Achilles' heel. It's even more than that. It's actually a broken leg. I don't know, it's even worse than that in terms of the situation we're in today in France. And this Republican idea that somehow, well, we're not going to keep any stats on whether black people are discriminated against, we're not going to keep any stats on whether women are discriminated against, or whether Arabs, who are the chief people under the heel of racism in France, whether they're discriminated against, because we all live in the great republic, France, we're all equal, so we don't need to have those kind of stats. So there's no stats in France to actually establish whether or not people are being discriminated against on the basis of their religion, of their race, of their gender, or anything else. That's an outrage. So we need to expose them. We need to oppose them. That means that we can't, as someone in The Guardian said today, on the left in France, I'm scared because it's become normal. And I can see why she's scared. And I'm scared because they've become normal. The idea that it's normal to be a Nazi in the French political discourse, because no one's saying anything against them. Okay, Mélenchon says some stuff. Mélenchon says some stuff against them and stuff, but okay, to be fair, they do say things against them. But unfortunately, when it comes to opposing them on the streets, it's not being done. So May Day is a wonderful day for workers to celebrate, but why have all the marches going away from the Nazis? The point is to have the marches going to the Nazis, to show that we are the many, we are the millions, organised working people. We can actually bring hundreds of thousands onto the streets. We've got to use that as a battering ram against the National Front in France. And no platform can't just be words. No platform has to be a reality. Otherwise, whether these people organise, they kill people. It's as simple as that. I mean, Macron, to his credit, was the family of a Moroccan man who was killed by the Front National after a rally, on the edge of a rally. One of them pushed him into the Seine. These people are now in the mainstream of French politics, and we've been here before. To be honest, France has had a fascist regime. It was in Vichy France. And there's a straight line from Vichy France to Le Pen today. And she made it very, very clear, if anyone doesn't understand this, when she came out and said, what are you talking about? Anti-Semitism and rounding up Jewish people in France. That wasn't the French state. What? I mean, it was the French state in the occupied bit and the unoccupied bit were doing it together. They loved it. I say they loved it. To my shame, I have some glasses from Boss. People know Boss, yeah? The French fashion house, and I've got to get rid of his glasses. They designed the suits for SS. All the other French fashion houses are all in the pocket of the fascist regimes. I've got to sum up. Anyway, to finish, we need a battle, and the battle is hopefully starting in France. I don't think it is true, but no one is doing anything in France. You're right, people are doing something, but we've got to be a lot stronger, we've got to be a lot clearer of what's going on. And we can't sit here on the other side of the channel and boast that somehow we're much better in England. Okay, we've been doing things, I think, we had a better strategy and a better tactics for dealing with them, but actually we're still in the situation where the UKIP and Theresa May are building the ground for these people to grow at some point in the future. That's how they've got to where they are. And the Nazis never get to power all by themselves. Check out which Nazi ever got to power by winning an election. None of them. They all get invited into power by the ruling class at the top of society. It's so scared of the workers' movement, so scared of their society collapsing, but they look to the fascists to help them. Yes, the right can get organised and they can start to mobilise their people and so on, but so can we. And actually the French left is much, much bigger than it is in this country, and I still have faith the French left can mobilise to actually bring that force to bear on the heads of the Le Pen family. I mean, their dad was speaking unmolested in Paris the other day as well. This has got to stop, and actually the way to stop it is through mass action, not little street fights with left and right and what have you, but hundreds of thousands of us against their puny numbers, bare human dust, as a comrade described them, another comrade described them, as it happens, from the 1930s. And I'll finish there, join the battle, because it's going to go on for some time.
If the only thing that's being offered to them, people may vote whatever way they do in a presidential election, the problem with it is all of the answer is, and in the second round, is more austerity, more austerity, more austerity. We're going to come back to the next election, and Le Pen will be challenging at the next election. So that's be a combination of taking them on, but also offering people a way out of the situation. Otherwise, she seems like an alternative, and that's why somebody like Trump, who's not a fascist, tries the same game. That's an anti-establishment. We've got to break the idea that they're the people taking on the establishment.
No, I'm not going to talk to the argument. No, just we can have a lot of discussions about the different currents here in France and so on. I just want to give an example. In 2002, that's not the first time in France that we had the National Front at the second round of the presidential elections. It happened. It happened in 2002. They were Chirac against Le Pen. And, you know, I was already fighting at this time. We had a huge argument. It was good. We built some committees against Le Pen everywhere. Between the two rounds in 15 days. There were 1 million demonstrators in the street of Paris on the May Day demonstration. And there were big arguments. There were the people who were arguing to say, to fight Le Pen, vote Chirac. That's the solution. We were not arguing between, okay, vote what you want. But the main thing, build a movement to argue against any vote for Le Pen. I didn't vote for Chirac, you know. But I was on the street to argue in my neighborhood, to tell everybody, you can give one vote to the fascists. And the question and the trouble is that a lot of people saw after the second round that because Chirac got 80% of the votes, that they had won a huge victory and the question of fascism was solved in France. Nobody looked at during the two rounds. Okay, Le Pen got a bad score in percentage, but 1 million more people voted for Le Pen between the first round and the second round. And it got two results. These people make a step forward building National Front, you know, in the next years, in the next months and the next years. First thing. The second thing is that arguing only on the vote, in result, gave a legitimacy to the National Front, because it appeared to be a debate. And now, in the elections of 2012, you're right, the best fighter in some ways, arguing against the National Front, was Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He was a candidate. But the difference was that in 2012, he was arguing and fighting for Le Pen to confront him, you know, on the TV in a debate. 10 years before, even the right wing couldn't have a debate with Le Pen on the TV. Nobody could accept that Le Pen speak on the TV. On 2012, the best argument against Le Pen was to argue, come on the TV for me to argue with you. It gave some legitimacy to the National Front. And now we are in this situation where, you know, it's normal for the National Front to organize public meeting. It's normal for the National Front, so for the fascists to come to speak on the TV. You know, on the TV in France now, you have all the time, not only Le Pen, but the lieutenants. You know, the niece who is peer than Marine Le Pen, Marion Maréchal Le Pen. She's even worse. That's the result. So that's why I argue, you know, I'm not arguing when are you going to vote on the second round and so on. The main question, are you organizing a fight in the street? Are you organizing the fight in your local neighborhood, in your school, in your workplace against the fascists? That's the basis, because the National Front is not going to disappear in the next months. They will be there with a government that will still build the ground for them to grow. And so the main question will be there more people organizing against them, arguing against them in every place. That's the key. That's why it's important to mobilize in the street against the fascists.